Welcome back to our course on strategic innovation. So in the video today, we're going to address the idea of corporate entrepreneurship. Now we haven't talked about this idea yet, but we'll see that it has many links to those that we've talked about already. And fundamentally, I want you to think of it as providing a different and complementary perspective to this question of how firms can create and take advantage of opportunities to build new businesses. So, what is corporate entrepreneurship? Now, the concept has been discussed in different ways in the literature. Today I'm going to draw from ideas and work by Robert Wolcott and Michael Lippitz at Northwestern. The essential idea of corporate entrepreneurship is that the firm is relying on and enabling employees to build new businesses that leverage resources of the parent firm. So more specifically, we want to think of this as a process by which teams in an organization within an established company conceive and foster and launch and manage a new business that's distinct from the parent companies, but that leverages the assets, market position, capabilities, and other resources of the parent firm. So this is important because this is not a process by which we as a firm fund some employees to go out in a completely separate organization, a spin out, or through a corporate venture capital effort. That is not what this is. This is within the firm rather than sending resources outside of the firm, and it leverages resources within the firm. So why is it important? Well, we've talked a lot about the idea that new businesses can threaten, new technologies can threaten firms and topple them from their position within a mature business. This is less about that. This is more about generating internal growth. There's numerous studies that look at the success rate of firms in maintaining growth above the rate of a country as a whole, and they find that this is very hard to do over an extended period of time. And so the goal here is to help firms to do that. And while doing so, we're going to see that one of the challenges that comes up that we're trying to address when we think about corporate entrepreneurship is how we manage the mature, established businesses and try to develop new ones at the same time. This is a familiar challenge, and we're overlapping with other work, but we're going to take a new perspective on it this time. So let's talk about that just a little bit more. How do the ideas that we're going to cover here add to what we've covered already? And the way to think about it is you're going to want to think about them as extending the range of tools we have to successfully build an innovative firm that can take advantage of opportunities and build new businesses. They add additional options to what we've discussed before. Up till now, we've really focused a lot on separating out innovative efforts into independent organizations or not doing that, and how you support that effort. So it's been, much of the discussion has been on the structural dimension. Here, we're going to see a conceptual framework and 4 ideal type models that help us promote and facilitate this process of corporate entrepreneurship. So let's go to it. So Wolcott and Lippitz, through their research, identified 4 approaches that large and successful firms have been using to facilitate the process of corporate entrepreneurship. And you see these in the chart here in very summary form, and we're going to go through them. And you'll see they're arranged in a 2x2 matrix that helps us make sense of them. Now, the models themselves, they give a name for each of them, ranging from the opportunist to the enabler to the advocate and the producer. And we'll talk about those. But the most important thing before we do that is to talk about what the dimensions of this matrix are. What are the axes? What's the x-axis? What's the y-axis? Now, if we look at the y-axis, this is about the resources. This is about who has authority over resources that are going to support corporate entrepreneurship efforts. And they found that firms will draw resources from a centralized, dedicated corporate pool, which is the top row, or from business units, ad hoc efforts to get corporate to support the effort, and so on. So that we've got a situation where we've got a dedicated pool of resources where it's pre-assigned to corporate entrepreneurship, or we have an ad hoc approach, which primarily will rely on funding from the business units or funding that corporate gives business units in response to requests. So that resource authority is one dimension along which these approaches differ. The second dimension, the x-axis here, is about ownership. Where in the firm is responsibility for developing corporate entrepreneurial ideas? Who has that responsibility? Now over on the left column here, that responsibility is diffused. It exists within the business units, within corporate. The ideas can come from anywhere and are supported from anywhere. In the right-hand column, we have a more focused approach. And in both of the models that exist on this right column, we have responsibility for driving corporate entrepreneurial activities residing in a dedicated unit, a corporate unit. So we have resource authority, dedicated and ad hoc. We have ownership of the process diffused through the organization or focused in a corporate unit. So with that said, we can cover the four models, and we'll start with the one in the bottom left corner here, near the origin, so to speak, the opportunist. This is the default. This is how firms start. This is the process by which I think you would normally think that new businesses are started. And in this case, ideas are typically going to bubble up from within the business units. We're going to have entrepreneurial individuals, creative ideas developing, and those individuals are going to work up to their management within the business unit to ask for resources to support them. Perhaps they're going to use a network to go across the corporation, find different funding sources. But the key point is that responsibility and funding is diffused and ad hoc. This is a emergent process, and we've already chronicled kind of the strengths and weaknesses of this kind of approach. The first advantage is that if a corporation has a culture that supports innovation, you're supporting a lot of latent entrepreneurs throughout the firm. But we've also discussed how business units typically are focused on their mainstream established business. There's a lot of incentives that make it hard to go ahead and allocate resources for an extended period of time to a new business. And the whole process is a serendipitous and not necessarily reliable and dependable one, in that we're not sure we're going to get a match of ideas with resources and ownership that works. So the point of this model, the opportunist model, is that things are that it relies on the latent entrepreneurs seizing that entrepreneurial opportunity on their own, opportunistically, and it's the foundation. It is where firms start. It's not something you want to shut down, right? But it's something that you may want to augment, and that's what Wilcott and Lippick have seen in firms, and they've seen firms doing it in different ways.